Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we also believe that by learning about the space that you can hold for your loved ones, that you also have more power than you think you do. Look, I know that we right now are in a very deep topic. Very, very deep. But as we even mentioned today in the episode, this is a topic that touches everybody's hearts. This is something that we need to be talking about. And I love today because today we talk more about how you can support the people in your lives that might be going through this. And if you're going through this right now, hopefully it brings you insight on how to support yourself as well, how to see something a little bit differently. If this is your first time joining us on the podcast, you're right in the middle of a really big story. In season 1, we started where I was telling my story from my journal when I was 15 and pregnant, and I went through a rocky road, a rocky relationship. My little girl passed away. We go through a lot of grief, and we talk a lot about finding light in the darkness and joy in the struggle, and figuring out ways that we can make it all make sense in our mind. The ideas that we can bring to it that make life better, that help us understand and see it more clearly. You know, it's interesting that we don't really live in the house that we live in. We don't really live in the neighborhood that we live in. We don't really live in the community that we live in. Where we really live is inside of our minds. We live inside of our minds. We can live in the same house. We can be married. We can be having a very similar outward experience as another person. And yet on the inside, we have such different experiences, which is why it's so important to talk about. How do we navigate inside of there? What are those roads like, right? So that's what we really go over in season 1. Then in season 2, my current husband is starting to share his story. And he's got a lot of things that happened for him as we were coming together. And we're right in the middle of an event that happened with his cousin. In high school, his cousin had come to live with them while his parents were serving a mission in Montreal, Canada. And while his cousin lived with them in their house, they lost him to suicide. It was a very trying time. And we're right in the middle of that story. So last episode, we talked a lot about if you are in that state where you're struggling with those thoughts, make sure you hear that episode. In today's episode, we're really focusing on giving support to the supporters of people who are struggling with suicide ideation. And that's what we're diving into today. And if you are one of the people who are currently at that point in your life where you're in that struggle, I'm hoping that this episode also lands in your heart. And just so you know, if you're not a supporter now, you might be in the future. And that statistic is actually all too realistic that that's a probability. So it's important to learn and to listen and to hold that in your heart so that you are ready to hold space for someone in your life that you love. Before we really dive in and get super deep in the episode, I want to let you know of something that is coming up that I'm really pumped and excited about. We keep talking about heart coherence on this podcast, and I've mentioned a few times that I'm doing a class in the fall. And guys, it's here. It is here. It's time. It's just around the corner. And what I'm doing right now is I'm doing a pre-sale for all of my genuine, 100% supporters, which are you that have listened to this podcast all of the time. And I genuinely appreciate your support so much. And so I'm doing a pre-sale. If you already know this is a course that you want to take, I am doing the most ridiculous price just as a way to say thank you so much for supporting me. This is going to be a 6-week course where we really dive in and we learn heart coherence, you will walk away from this course having developed this incredible skill, and it will assist you in incredible ways in your life, in your physical body, in your mental state, in the harmony you experience around you with your relationships and in your home. I know we talk about it on the podcast so much, which is why it's such a part of the fire that's inside me, that I believe that it can do so much for us to simply learn how to spend a little bit of time in heart coherence every day. So if that is a skill that you're interested in, please DM me. Send me a DM on Instagram, or you can email me at hello@myfriendmisha and say I'm in. Just say the words I'm in, and I will get all of the details to you. If you want to know like more about it, you can also say I'm interested. Let me know more details, and I will let you know. I'm going to do a story this week for my followers, for just people who follow me, and I'm going to be able to answer all of those questions for you, what it looks like, how much it is, the whole thing, right? And then you can decide if that's something that you want to participate in. We would love to have you. All right. I'm really excited for that. Right now, let's dive into this incredible episode.
August 25th, 2023, present day. At the time of this episode, it's been more than 27 years since Chase died. He is still a huge part of my life, and I cherish the rest of the story that we haven't gotten to yet in this podcast. I am reminded of him weekly, if not daily, whether it's one of my boys wearing his number on their soccer uniform, or to see Misha's custom art throughout our house with his number depicted in some abstract way, or to see the number 7 almost anywhere I go, and to think of him. Consider this. Everyone listening to this episode has lost or will lose someone they know or love to suicide. Many of us will sadly experience this several times over, if not dozens. A few years ago, my family almost lost me. At the time, it wasn't enough that I had the most amazing wife, kids, family, and friends, or huge prospects with my career and business. The previous 14 years consisted of a series of unfortunate events and circumstances that completely altered my brain and personality. I was no longer me. The effects were such high levels of anxiety, stress, and depression that what consumed my thoughts was just wanting the daily pain to go away and to experience any degree of normalcy. It wasn't until my friend Kurt died by suicide, leaving behind a beautiful wife and kids with similar ages to mine, that I truly woke up. This contributed to helpful conversations about suicide and key steps and actions to bring back the real Jake. It wasn't just Misha that was missing the real me. The truth is that if it wasn't for everything she did or made possible for me, once I opened up and she fully understood what I was experiencing, then I probably wouldn't be here today. Mental health is one of the most important topics of this generation, if not the most important topic. It is truly a worldwide epidemic. The staggering statistics suggest that a huge portion of people in our lives have some type of mental illness, great or small. I truly believe that the work Misha is doing will impact millions of lives through her unique way of teaching us how to best sync our hearts and minds to becoming or being the best version of ourselves. 5 years ago, I was at the lowest point of my life. My own thoughts of suicide caused me to reflect heavily on my experience with Chase. It proved very therapeutic at the time to reach out to everyone that was home when he died and to write a piece about it. With the help of my father Dan, mother Lynette, sisters Cassie and Lindy, and brother Jordan, I share what happened. On January 22nd, 1996, still heartbroken, still sulking, the girl of my dreams recently dumped me. Sitting down in the family room, Mom in the chair next to me, Dad standing by the windows, close to the TV, older sister Cassie, home from college, sitting at the counter, talking on the phone. Younger sister Lindy, upstairs, closed bedroom door, listening to music. 7-year-old brother Jordan, upstairs, innocently sleeping. The converted office bedroom door opens. I turn my head left, glancing up. Chase walks by. No words exchanged, no eye contact. His 16-year-old facial expression never seen before. Not happy, not sad, just blank. He rounds the corner, disappearing downstairs. Dad walks into the kitchen, sets down his protein drink. Everything is still normal. Minutes later, a piercing boom. All 3 floors shake. The table next to me rattles, all in a brief moment. Seemed like a 1-second earthquake. Silence, curiosity, anticipation. Cassie thinking some weights downstairs must have tipped over. Lindy assuming a heavy wood stool fell on the kitchen tile. Dad wondering if something hit the house. It then dawns on him. He rushes downstairs. Mom and I quick to our feet, looking downstairs. My eyes of terror and confusion, observed by Cassie. Intent listening. Dad sees a light on under the closed door. The weight room with a hidden key to get in. Once inside, another hidden key to the gun safe. Dad says to himself, "Oh no." Fearing the worst, he opens the door. Unrecallable words as he sprints back upstairs. The source of the sound, confirmed. I happen to look at the clock. 10:12 p.m. Panic. Uncontrollable screaming. Shock. A 911 call. One moment Chase is with us. The next, he's gone. The week before, lunch. He buys taco time for everyone that came in. Hard-earned car savings, depleted. Didn't make sense to his friends at the time. Perhaps a day or two before he died. His favorite Nike sweatshirt, CDs, and other items, neatly stacked, lovingly placed in Lindy's closet, a treasured gift to be discovered many days later. After school, the day of, an uncharacteristic question to his aunt, his second mom while his parents are in Montreal, Canada for 3 years. Gently asks her what he can do for her. He shovels some snow. The night of, he calls a friend at work, apologizes for something unresolved. Friends again. His last time coming through the front door. Lindy notices something wrong, peeks in his room a little bit later, asks if he is okay, if he wants to talk about it. His final words ever heard. Maybe later, maybe someday. No note left, but thoughtful actions. His ways of saying goodbye. His way of showing he cared. Everything planned in advance. Everything. He had made up his mind. We didn't know. We still don't know why. In the months to follow, our soccer team continues the winning streak. Our heart and passion, a brotherhood tribute. The best is yet to come. Chase, the original number 7, always to be honored and remembered. Always.
One of the most incredible tricks for getting out of your own mind is to do things for other people. I think this part is what totally rips my heart out about Chase. Listening to how carefully he planned to love people and to have his own ways of showing them that love, as part of his plan. And the reason that feels so big to me is because normally that would bring in enough hormones that feel good that could keep you going. And something that I really love that we're starting to learn and bring awareness to in the area of suicide is that when we lose someone to suicide, it is not a choice. It's not a decision per se, okay? Because their brain is in such a state that they're not in proper reasoning. They're not in a state where those hormones made a difference, helped pull them out, so to say. I think that's something for me that as we see what happened with Chase, and as we learn and learn more about the science and the things that they're learning behind, studying suicide and what happens, I think this is a really important part to know, because I think it helps us process when we are left behind. It helps us to understand the condition of the person and dismiss thoughts that are, why would they do that to me? Or kind of the ones that really, really hurt us. Did I not love them enough? Type of thoughts. It's a little like when we have a broken arm. It's not like we can just decide to not have a broken arm. When we have something broken in our brain, it's difficult to just decide. There's a quote from Reasons to Stay Alive, or actually a couple paragraphs that I want to share with you. It says, "You are no less or more of a man or a woman or a human for having depression than you would be for having cancer or cardiovascular disease or a car accident. So what should we do? Talk, listen, encourage talking, encourage listening, keep adding to the conversation, stay on the lookout for those wanting to join the conversation, keep reiterating again and again that depression is not something you admit to. It's not something you have to blush about. It is a human experience. A boy, girl, man, woman, young, old, black, white, gray, straight, rich, poor experience. It is not you. It is simply something that happens to you, and something that can often be eased by talking. Words, comfort, support. It took me more than a decade to be able to talk openly, properly, to everyone about my experience. I soon discovered the act of talking is in itself a therapy. Where talk exists, so does hope. That is, what I want to talk to you about today. I think it's really important to, first of all, rearrange our minds around the conditions that bring about suicide when we lose someone to suicide. That's important to frame our minds around, and we'll talk more about that in the next big episode. Today, I want to really talk about what do we do about it? How do we help someone through it? The same way we would help someone with a broken arm. We have certain protocol, we have certain things that help them, that assist them, that make them feel better, that comfort them, that aid them. And part of that is our own understanding, right, of what it is that we're up against. And so I think it's important to understand the gravity of what's really going on inside of their brain. That's important. And I think that's one of the very first steps. And I love the way that he brought up how now he talks about it. Now it's okay and normal. He had to get to a certain place for it to be a normal thing that we talk about, because we've put stigmas around the struggle, right? And the more that we free those stigmas and that we allow them to come about and that we can actually talk. A lot of people are afraid that talking about suicide brings it about more, which isn't true. Talking about suicide brings support. It can bring love. It can bring assistance. It can bring, the idea that we are holding your pain with you. That's a really important twist. And with all of the statistics, right, that suicide is so prevalent, or I guess even suicide ideation being even more prevalent, because that is something many, many people experience. And normalizing that is a very good thing. Remember, we talked about last time how normalizing it helps us to feel normal, but we also want to remember that we don't want it to be normal, that we have these thoughts. We don't want that to feel like that's just part of our life now. Right? We don't want the idea that suicide ideation is normal to lull us to sleep and be like, well, everybody handles it, everybody deals with it, whatever. No. That's when the lights go on, and that's when we take action. You know, people only have the thought that it's so bad because they have such intense pain. People only have the thought that they want to end the pain. They want to end the situation that they're in so badly. And so really, it's not the thoughts of suicide that we're trying to fix. It's the situation of what they're up against that we get to be brought into awareness of, that we get to then help them walk through. Oh, and it's so important. You know, everyone says, don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Get help. But here's the thing. What do? What are the actions that we take if you're telling me not to do it alone? So, okay, the message is clear, but now what are my actions? And so that's what I really want to go deep into today. The thing that's interesting about warning signs for a teenager is these warning signs are signs that they exhibit normally and naturally: moody, sleepy, fatigue, irritability. These are things that teenagers naturally will carry through their life. And so sometimes the warning signs aren't as clear, right? The important part is trying to be connected and talk enough to your loved one. The trick is when they feel like they have to conceal these thoughts so much for whatever reason that they feel this, right? And it's important for us to, if you haven't been up against it, to be in this conversation. Because we have to reframe and we have to change some things about the way we think. So that when this happens, when someone tells us that they're struggling and that they're hurting or whatever, we can hold space for them the best way that we can. So the first idea that I want to bring to you is I want you to picture a child coming to you with tears absolutely streaming down their face because their brand new toy has just been broken. You know, and let's add on top of it that they saved all their money to buy it or whatever, that really, really makes this an emotional event for them. If you pick them up and you describe how it happened and why the toy broke and all of those things, that's actually not what that child needs or wants to hear. They actually want to feel comfort and reassurance of some kind. Maybe helping them see that it's a fixable thing or that the situation can be remedied. Like helping them feel reassured, not to point out why it's broken. And I think that to first start the reframing is a very good place to start, because I think so often we want to jump right to, and we know all of the answers about, well, this is going on in your life because you're doing, something ridiculous or, whatever it is. And I think that's the first thing to just really point out that, the way that we respond to them is going to predict how much they want to talk to us going forward. We really want our loved ones to feel comfortable bringing us their heavy. And knowing that just because they're bringing us their heavy, it doesn't mean that we have to fix their heavy, but that our response allows them the space to share it. Our response is so huge. If they feel shame, they will zip that up and they will be done. And I think that there is fear around saying the wrong thing, right? Because it's a very tender situation. And so remember that initially the best thing that you can do is to really not say anything except for encouragement that you're there to listen. Maybe just saying words like, can you tell me more? Can you describe to me, what that feels like? What do you mean when you say this? And how much have you been feeling this lately? Validate. I can see that this is, hard, or I can see that exactly why you might feel this way. Those things are important to help them to continue to sort of be able just to have that therapeutic notion of being able to talk. I always loved my dad's philosophy, and I want to take caution in saying this, but I'm going to tell you the philosophy and then I'll tell you why. The philosophy of his is that if we all had really good friends, like 80% of us wouldn't need a therapist. Now, I don't want that to come across wrong, because I think anytime we're up against a situation like this, professional help is exactly what we need. It's tricky because sometimes the person isn't open to professional help. But it doesn't mean that you can't get professional help to help you through the situation. And, I want to bring up, I talked in the last episode of calling the suicide hotline and how the number is so much more simple now than it used to be. All you have to dial is 988. 988. And you have a certified crisis worker on the other end waiting to talk to you. And it is 1000% okay to call when you are the supporter of someone going through this, not necessarily the person going through it. And so I think that's a really important fact to know, and that a lot of callers actually call with the person who's having the thoughts, to have somebody walk them through the conversation and really help to guide that, right? Because when somebody is in a really bad spot in their mind and you try to guide the conversation, typically you'll end up in the rabbit hole that they are in their mind, which is a really hard place to be, right? We want to listen to them. We want to give them the space to where we're holding their hearts very gently, but we also want to help guide the conversation towards hope or towards at least neutrality. Because a lot of times when we're in that state, anything positive feels like a violation. There's an interesting quote by Matt Haig that says, "The odd thing about depression and anxiety is that it acts like an intense fear of happiness, even as you yourself consciously want that happiness more than anything. But if it catches you smiling or even fake smiling, then, well, that stuff's just not allowed, and you know it. So here comes 10 tons of counterbalance," right? And so the hope is almost a threat. And so that's kind of an interesting thing to notice. But it is hard because when you get into these conversations with someone who's struggling and you let them talk, is a very important thing. But it's really important for you to continue to just hold and be in a space of love, and to continually have your answers be that of at least lifting them from the place that they're at. Now, this is tricky because, I love Brene Brown, and if you've not seen the HBO production, The Atlas of the Heart, this is a fantastic, fantastic production. And in this, she talks about going into the darkness with someone and wanting to turn the lights on in there instead of just sitting in the darkness with them. And that most often what they really, really want and need is to know that someone has the capability of sitting in that dark with them, validating their pain and letting them know that this is okay. I can sit in this pain with you. I can be here with you. Careful not to run into this dark room that they might be in and just to bring in all the floodlights, because that's absolutely shocking to their system. It's important to remember no judgment, no shame. Just listen, hold them, let them know that you can see what they're up against and validate them for where they're at. Those are important things. Something that's really, really important for me and for my personality, and it might be the same for you, is being really aware that you cannot fix it, and it's not your job to fix it. It's your job to support them. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do all kinds of research and figuring out, because when you figure out, you bring light to the situation, and in a way that is fixing, right? But not in a way that is in their face, trying to fix them. Does that make sense? Do you see the difference? Something that Brene suggests in this episode number 5 on that series that I mentioned, and it's not a series about suicide. The episode is about validating and recognizing emotions and holding people's hearts carefully. That's really what it's about, okay? So that is a huge part of playing the support role that you play when you're trying to walk someone else through this, when you're trying to hold space and create safe spaces for them. So often they get so tripped in their brain that just being able to say the things out loud helps them see it so much more clearly. And so the thing that Brene said in this episode that really felt mind-blowing to me, man, because I so badly want to have the right thing to say kind of stored in my heart and ready. Like I have a personality that really wants to fix it. But that actually isn't helpful. That's controlling the situation, which is actually an enemy to what you want to be doing. You want to be holding that space for them. You want to be holding empathy. And advice giving isn't empathy. Trying to fix it isn't empathy. Empathy isn't changing how someone feels, but letting them know they're not alone in the feeling. You're not alone. I'm with you. In what ways can you communicate that and hold that space? And then the thing that she said that I love with all of my heart is, what does support look like right now? And when they look at you with a confused look on their face, because they probably will, like, what? If you've never said that to them, what does support look like right now? Then you can say, do you need me just to hold space for you and let you talk? Do you need a head massage? Do you need suggestions and help on how to move? Do you need to be distracted? What is it that you need? Because guess what? When you do it that way, they get to choose. And when they get to choose and they are ready for what's coming, it feels very different. And it's also such an eye-opening experience if you have a personality like mine to not fix it, to just listen, and to know that you are moving mountains by listening. Those things are so huge. Another quote by Matt Haig. You guys, I read the book Reasons to Stay Alive last week. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. And I'll say, by having read that it's obviously written to the person who is struggling. But the person who's helping the person struggle to read a book like that, so good, so smart. So he said, all we can do for the moment is really all we need to do. to listen to ourselves. When we're trying to get better, the only truth that matters is what works for us. And so many times we can see something bigger and we're like, no, we got to do this and we got to move. But if that's not going to work for our person, then it doesn't really matter. We could literally wrap the episode up with that one piece of advice of really, really how to hold space for that person. There's a couple other things that I do want to go over. So we'll say a few more things, okay? But one of the things that I want to illustrate is that if you walk away from that conversation enlightened and you say, how would I be able to bring light into that view? And you go searching for answers. They're not necessarily even answers to give to them, but help you understand it more. It helps so much, because then you can, first of all, you're ready. If they do ever choose the option, yeah, I need suggestions. How do I move forward in this? Like, how do I really overcome this? Then you have it and you're ready, you know? And so part of the rest of this episode is helping you figure out how to go and do your own research so that you can experience a mindset shift. And if you can experience a mindset shift, then there is a high probability that will lend, even the energy of it, to the conversations that you're having with your loved one. So there was a circumstance where when Jake and I guess we were married, we'd been married for about 4 or 5 years, and we were picking out a couch. And we flipped through this book, and there was all of these samples and swatches of different couch materials. And we found one that we loved, and we're like, yes, we picked out the couch we wanted it on. We ordered it, and I'm not kidding you, luckily, we got something in the mail that said, this is back before you might get an email about it. So we got something in the mail that kind of said, hey, we don't have enough fabric left of this certain type, and we need you to pick a different fabric. So initially we were super bummed, but then we turned the page and we saw a mock-up, a picture of what the couch would have looked like. And we didn't know that swatch had big stripes in it. And we would have absolutely despised this couch. And the takeaway from that is that sometimes when we're in our experience, we can really only see a small section of the material. And if we can widen the view, right? The bottom of the valley never provides the clearest view. If we can climb up to that top of that mountain, or if we can see a picture of the entire couch, we're going to see a different story and a different perspective. If we widen that aperture, and anything that you can do to bring that into the situation with your loved ones, that is a huge perspective shift, and it's a beautiful thing. When we learn about other people who have suffered and survived, and they've overcome despair, they've overcome these low states that you might be in, a lot of times that brings hope. Sometimes that is what helps us see the entire couch, right? So if we can pour over stories like that, both on our own and if our loved ones are up for it, that can help shift their mindset. It can help them grab onto a tiny shred of hope that can happen for them too. There's a story of the hare and the frogs. Hares, as you know, are very timid. The least shadow sends them scurrying in fright to a hiding place. Once they decided to die rather than to live in such misery. But while they were debating how to best meet death, they thought they heard a noise, and in a flash they were scampering off to their protected haven. On the way, they passed a pond where a family of frogs was sitting among the reeds on the bank. In an instant, the startled frogs were seeking safety in the mud. "Look," cried a hare, "things are not so bad after all, for here are creatures who are even afraid of us." I love this story because it helps us see that, the hares thought that they were the ones that were the most timid of all. And then they see somebody else sort of suffering more than them. And it's interesting how our minds can shift when we see that someone else is worse off than ourselves. That our troubles are not the only troubles. That things really are not as bad as maybe they could be. And sometimes when we take that step back, we start to realize how fortunate we are. And that's what starts to open up that bigger picture. And then the stories that bring hope. I was listening to a woman talk about how she had attempted suicide. And she lived to tell the story about it. And it paralyzed her legs. And she goes around in her wheelchair sharing her story. And in a powerful way, a lot of people have breakthroughs. Because through her words, they can start to see a different reality. Every single thing that you do as the supporter, as the person playing the supporting role, everything that you do to understand the situation or to bring light into the situation makes a difference. I love the quote that says, "We are not our thoughts, we are the people listening to them." If we start to grasp that thought, and then we get to share it with our loved one in some sort of a circumstance, they start to disassociate with the idea that they are the ones who have gotten themselves into this trouble. We have a tendency to think we created all of the things. And to some degree, the way that our brain functions and not pulling ourselves out of that, it's true, okay? We could go really, really deep into that. But the most important thing to know is that what naturally happens to us in life is that hard things happen, and then we get addicted to the patterns that our brain creates around hard. We get addicted to stress and the hormones that come from all the negative thoughts. And that's the most natural path, actually, for our brain. It's very, very sad. But when we start to have a disassociation, like I can remember when Jake started to see that we can become addicted to negative thoughts and that that's the natural process of our brain. And that, yes, we can come in and make a difference in that space, but just the comforting idea that it's a natural process and that I didn't choose this is so relieving. There's a story called The Stream and the Fisherman. In a serene village nestled beside a peaceful stream lived a wise old fisherman named Kai. He spent his days fishing and reflecting on the nature of life. One day, a curious young traveler approached Kai and asked, "Fisherman, how do you find such tranquility?" Kai smiled warmly and motioned toward the stream. "Sit here beside me, and I shall show you." They sat by the water's edge, and Kai told the traveler, "Observe the stream. Imagine that your thoughts are like leaves floating on its surface." The traveler watched as the leaves gently floated down the stream. "Like thoughts," Kai explained. "They come and go, but the stream itself remains unchanged." The traveler nodded, beginning to understand. "So our thoughts are like the leaves, and we are like the stream." "Exactly," Kai replied. "Thoughts may be loud, quiet, positive, or negative, but just as the stream doesn't define itself by the leaves it carries, you are not defined by your thoughts. You are the conscious observer of those thoughts." As the sun set, painting the sky with warm hues, the travelers felt a sense of warmth wash over them. They realized that they could simply watch their thoughts without being entangled in them. With gratitude, the traveler thanked Kai for the valuable lesson. They continued their journey, carrying the wisdom of the stream and the fisherman with them. This story and this wise fisherman teaches us and shows us that we are not our thoughts. And a lot of times when we're in such a state, when we're really feeling low, part of the thought that accompanies that is that we are that negativity. That is us. That's who we are. When in essence, we are the one that observes our thoughts. Which also brings a lot of power, right? Because we can alter that once we understand that. But most of the time when someone is really, really low, trying to teach them that would be like turning on floodlights. It's important for us to start to understand, but the first step would be just starting to realize that we are not our thoughts. We are the people listening to them. We can find quietness in there, and we can watch our thoughts go by just like leaves on a stream. What makes us the person is the interaction with the thoughts. And when we start to disassociate, we get to see that we get to have a choice in the thoughts that we interact with. It's like being on a stream and seeing a really ugly bunch of leaves tangled up in fishing wire and string and yuckiness and, having gathered versus just a beautiful little leaf floating down and trying to freak out because that thought is passing by. When we understand that that's something that we can just let it float and pass and leave, it's a different experience. And so just by you starting to understand these things, that's a way that you start to see the entire picture and that you get to then influence your loved one, right? At times when they are ready for it. It's interesting me saying when they're ready for it, because there's a lot of times that when someone is suffering, they might say to you, yeah, I'm doing horribly and I don't want to talk about it. Oh, and that feels like a knife. It hurts. But all we can do is support and love. All you can do is then say, all right, no, I love you and I'm here when you need it. I'm here whenever you're ready. I'm here and I love you. And then changing the subject and still trying to talk to them about other things, still trying to support them and love them. It's really important to know and to understand and to surrender to the idea that no matter how smart or how loving or how determined you might be, that it's your duty or your job, or that you can keep someone alive. What you can do is love them. What you can do is support them. What you can do is, right, all of the things that we're talking about today, you can research it on your own. You can bring things to this situation that the other person that you're supporting does not have the energy to do. And when they push you away, stay in love. Stay in love for them. Because if you dip and you go low and you're like, you just want to throw your hands up in the air, that's a really low vibration, right? That we just entered into. And that's when we go back to the idea that their brain is broken and it might hurt you. And for you, it's to love. See the situation for what it is, see the broken arm, and bring them soup, okay? You have to stay in a space where you can continue to love. I'm not going to say that you're never going to get ticked off or mad or, any of that, because that's all really, really deep and normal things. But the more that you can hold space for them, the better. Don't give up. And even when they push you away, there's still so much that you can do. You can pray, and you can create a lot of incredible energy, even in that space, and send it to them. The power of a mother in a quiet corner of her room is a force to be reckoned with for real. That's a very incredible thing. Being able to shift out of the problem to feel and bring something different into the situation, think of that as your job. Think of that as like, they don't have the capability to feel love, so I'm going to go create that in my heart, and I'm going to radiate that to them. There's a lot that I want to go into around the energy of heart coherence and the ability that we have to create this amazing space and then to send that energy to somebody else. That's something that I will be teaching in my upcoming heart coherence course, if that's something that you're wildly interested in. It's really incredible stuff, and there's a lot of beautiful science that goes into and showing exactly how that happens. You know, and they've shown it with humans and animals, right? And so there's not really a lot of disputing what can happen with an animal, you know? The point is that you have the capability. And I'm going to tell you right now, just going into a quiet space and trying to feel your love for that person, the person that you love so much, and entering a state, okay, that is quiet and breathing. And if it's me and I'm giving you advice, I would bring prayer and divine guidance into that situation. And I would create the most amazing things that you can create in your own space and in your own heart. That's also a space that you can be really in touch with your intuition and asking for that divine guidance, spending time pondering what are the actions that you can take, taking a lot of precautions not to be caught up in worry, right? Because that drops your vibration into low, 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 low. But to stay in a space where you can be concerned, because concern, and the distinction between worry and concern is that concern can bring about actions. When you're concerned, you can sit in a space where you say, okay, what is on my plate for today? What are the things and the actions that I can take? What can I learn about? How can I widen my view? How can I bring love? How can I send, positivity towards this person? What are the ways I can lift them and not walk into their darkness with floodlights, but maybe I can light a candle. Maybe I can help them see the entire picture of the couch. And it's in those spaces where you can ask questions like, why are they experiencing this? Help me to understand. What are the things that I can help them find balance in their life? Do they need more love? Do they need more accountability? Do they need more fun? Is it helpful for me to create activities, right? Like active ones that you use your body to do so that they can let some of that stress out through their body? Or can I bring about perspective shifting in another way? Help me to see it. There's a quote by Jonathan Rottenberg that says, we need broader mood literacy and an awareness of tools that interrupt low mood states before they morph into longer and more severe ones. These tools include altering how we think, the events around us, our relationships, and conditions on our bodies. Think about, conditions on our bodies like being, we work from sun up to sundown. We're so taxed. Think about the situations that are contributing to the state of their brain. Maybe they are too sedentary. Maybe they have actually too much time on their hands. And so how can we help them counterbalance that? How can we help them come out of that? And how can we as a supporter recognize it before it morphs into a very severe state where they're pushing you out? Those are all very good things to ponder and think about in those quiet spaces, because you will be directed, and it will take time, and it will feel difficult. Okay, because that is the nature of what we're up against. But the more that it feels hard, the bigger the breakthrough. The more even entitled you are to the answers when they do come. Your support is an incredible beacon of light in somebody else's storm. Your presence, your patience, your unwavering care are lifelines that can make all the difference. In the face of these immense challenges and dark moments that your loved one goes through, when you continue to offer a steady hand and a listening heart, even after times of being pushed away, or you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. Sometimes it's not even 2 and 1. But your empathy, your understanding, and your desire to learn more, that provides a lifeline to the person who's struggling. Your willingness to step in and listen without judgment, to offer a shoulder to lean on, or to be a very distant person because they can't handle touch. Sometimes that happens. Your presence there still makes such an incredible difference. It actually brings them strength even when you cannot see it. You are a reminder to them that even in the toughest times, compassion can be a powerful force for healing. And I know that there are many times you'll be stumped and you'll not have the answers, and that's okay. But what matters is your ability and willingness to listen, to be there, to hold space, to offer the idea that you care. They don't always have the capacity when their brain is broken to appreciate you in that space. And I want you to remember that every single thing that you do in that space makes a huge and incredible difference. And I hope that after today's episode that you can grasp, even by any small means, that when you learn about the space that you can hold for your loved ones, especially in the private, quiet spaces, you have more power than you think you do. All right, friend. I hope that episode landed. I hope that it helped someone out there. And if you know of someone who's trying to support someone through this right now, and you think it will help them, if you think it actually is something that would really propel them into a space that they could support someone else more, then please share it with them. Jake and I will be doing an episode in the future, just because I know that there's things he brought up that I didn't talk about. And I just want you to know that in 2 more big episodes, okay, Jake and I will have a conversation. We're going to just kind of change up the format a little bit, and we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about and dive into some of the things that we didn't go over, okay, today, that you might have questions about. And I want you to feel free to submit any questions that you have, that you kind of want answered, that maybe you are up against something and you just have something really specific that you want to ask. go ahead and DM me those questions on Instagram, or you can also send me an email at hello@myfriendmisha.com. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for, if you're listening still, really seeing this episode to the end and having a desire in your heart to make a difference for the one that you are supporting, for the only statistic out there that really matters, and that's the one that you're carrying in your heart, okay? Your loved one. I want to leave you with this quote that says, yesterday may have been tough, today may be tough, tomorrow may be as well, but you are tough too. Until next time, my friend.